Hey, this is Joshua Page from the church at Mon River. Thanks for taking time to listen to this teaching today. I hope that as we look at the Bible together, that it helps you to grow in your love for God, gives you some practical ways to show love for one another, and it inspires you to go out and make more followers of Jesus. Enjoy the teaching.
John chapter 8, verses 12 to 32, and let's start reading. Jesus spoke to them again. I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life. So the Pharisees said to him, You are testifying about yourself. Your testimony is not valid. Even if I testify about myself, Jesus replied, my testimony is true, because I know where I came from and where I'm going. But you don't know where I come from or where I'm going. You judge by human standards. I judge no one. And if I do judge, my judgment is true, because it is not I alone who judge, but I and the Father who sent me. Even in your law it is written that the testimony of two witnesses is true. I am the one who testifies about myself, and the Father who sent me testifies about me. They asked him, Where is your Father? You know neither me nor my Father, Jesus answered. If you knew me, you would also know my Father. He spoke these words by the treasury while teaching in the temple, but no one seized them, because his hour has yet not come. Then he said to them again, I'm going away. You will look for me, and you will die in your sin. Where I'm going, you cannot come. So the Jews said again, He won't kill himself, will he? Since he says, Where I'm going, you cannot come. You are from below, he told them. I am from above. You are of his world, and I am not of this world. Therefore, I told you that you will die in your sins. For if you do not believe that I am he, you will die in your sins. Who are you? They questioned. Exactly what I've been telling you from the very beginning, Jesus told them. I have many things to say and to judge about you, but the one who sent me is true, and what I have heard from him, these things I tell the world. They did not know he was speaking to them about the Father. So Jesus said to them, When you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing on my own. But just as the Father taught me, I say these things. The one who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, because I always do what pleases him. As he was saying these things, many believed in him. Then Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, If you continue in my word, you really are my disciples. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. This is God's word.
We have been going verse by verse through the book of John, and if you have been following with us, John was one of the closest people in the life of Jesus Christ, and he wrote this book as an account of Jesus' life. And so we've been going through this book verse by verse, and we ended in John chapter 7, and today we're going to pick up in John chapter 8. But if you notice, we're going to pick up in John chapter 8, verse 12. So what about this section 1 through 11? We're not covering that. John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11 is this famous story about Jesus interacting with this woman who was caught in adultery. The religious leaders caught her in the act. We can imagine what that looks like. And they throw her down into the city street and they go to stone her to death. And Jesus steps in and on behalf of this woman, he condemns the religious leaders and he saves this woman's life. But we're not going to teach this popular story because I believe that this was not a story that was originally recorded in the Bible. That might seem like a really strange statement to make because it's in our English copies of the Bible, but I don't believe this was an original part of the Bible. And that might seem kind of odd to you, but I put together a video that is posted on our YouTube page, and I will also send it out in our weekly email this week to explain why I don't believe that is part of the Bible. And this video also teaches a little bit about the history of the English Bible, and hopefully you come away not with greater doubts, but with a greater understanding and confidence in the scriptures that we have in front of us. So the video is about 12 minutes long. I encourage you this week to take the time to listen to that. As we look at this text today, it's talking about this theme of light and darkness. There's some themes in the Bible that we have a harder time connecting with. No one in this room that I'm aware of is a shepherd. No one grows a vineyard. We don't use salt to preserve our food. So some of these themes in the Bible can be a little bit more challenging for us to think through. But as we look at this theme today of light and darkness, we see it throughout the scriptures. And this is something that all of us in the room can connect with. Right? We think about light as a positive thing. You can see me better right now as I communicate with you because the lights are turned on. Light helps things grow. Our plants cannot grow without sunlight. For us who live in Pittsburgh, those long, dreary winters, we feel better when the sun comes out. We get that vitamin D into our bodies. I think about my young children sitting here. They feel better at night when there's a night light in their room shining on them. It makes them feel safer. While light has these positive effects on us, we also can connect with darkness having negative effects. Right? Things are more dangerous, risky at night. It was just last week, my wife went to bed early because she had an early morning shift, and I had a late night meeting. And so she went to bed a couple hours before me, and she got up to go to the bathroom the same time I was going to bed, and I came up the stairs, and she opened the bathroom door, and she saw my silhouette there, and she was very, very scared. And she got mad at me the next day for scaring her so bad. She told me I was lucky that she didn't punch me in the dark room. But if the light had been on, if it had been daytime, it would have been a completely different thing. It could have played out the exact same way, that I come up the stairs and she sees me. But because it was dark outside, she was scared. Right? We also can think about light and darkness in a symbolic way. Right? You might tell someone who has a very beautiful, bright smile, you might say, hey, when you come into a room, your smile just lights up the room. And we can also think about darkness in this symbolic way. You might turn on the news in the evenings, and you just see senseless murders. You see people harming children. And you think about someone who's just got arrested for taking advantage of elderly people. And you might comment, man, there's just so much darkness in the world around us. This darkness can also have a spiritual meaning. We see Jesus talk about darkness in this way in John chapter 8 in a spiritual sense. He talks about people who are living in darkness. As we see him talking about this, he wasn't talking about murderers and pedophiles and thieves. He was talking about the religious leaders. People who followed the Jewish rules really well. But he says that their hearts are in darkness. And this kind of darkness can be felt within all of us. It's what causes us to stir up conflict with other family members or with neighbors. It's what causes us to pursue our lust. It's what causes us to think evil thoughts about someone when they cut us off on the road. And in this passage, Jesus explains the consequences of living in darkness, but he also talks about a solution, that light has overcome the darkness. And today we will see how we should live in the light. We will look at the story in John chapter 8, and we'll see a conversation that Jesus has with these religious leaders. And when we do so, we can get the sense that it's the same context as John chapter 7. This is even more clear if we exclude that section 8 through 11 about the woman being caught in adultery. We see at the very beginning of this passage in John chapter 8, verse 12, it says this, "And Jesus spoke to them again." And it was about 5 weeks ago, but when we were in John chapter 7, Matt and Chris, they taught about how this festival of shelters was taking place. The Jewish people, they would annually get together for this big holiday, and they would celebrate their escape from slavery in Egypt. The Jews in our area, they will celebrate this holiday themselves called Sukkot starting next Sunday. When Matt was teaching about this festival of shelters from John chapter 7, he was talking about how the festival had this big theme of water. But this festival also had a big theme of light. After the Jewish people left Egypt, they then entered the wilderness. And there we get this clear picture of God being light in the darkness. As they were fleeing from Egypt, it says that God was leading the people through the wilderness with this pillar of fire in the night. So for the Jewish people to celebrate this in Jesus' day, there in their temple, they had 4 75-foot-high lampstands. Think about that. 4 75-foot-high lampstands. And they would light these in this giant bowl. I also read on some Jewish history this week that the people would get together and they would sing and dance with torches lit in their hands. And those Jewish writings that I was reading from that day, they would say how impressive this moment was with these giant lampstands and everyone dancing with their torches. They said it would light up all of Jerusalem. This was surely an impressive thing in a day where there was no street lights because they didn't have electricity to see the night sky lit up. And during this festival of shelters, Jesus makes the second of 7 I am claims. It's quite possible that he makes this claim under the light of these giant lamps. And Jesus makes this symbolic statement. George, can you help me out, bro? I got nothing here. Okay, here we go. Come back. Okay, Jesus makes this statement here. He says, "I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life." Jesus uses this theme of light and darkness, and he makes this statement. He says that he is the light of the world. And this is significant because it reminds us of this Jewish prophecy in the book of Isaiah. It talks about the coming Messiah. This is what Isaiah says. Listen here. He says, "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. A light has dawned on those living in the land of darkness." And Jesus makes this statement. He says, "I am the light." And the religious leaders, they picked up on what Jesus was saying, the claim that he was making with this. And they accuse him there in the passage. He says, "You're making this claim about yourself. How can we trust your witness about yourself?" Both Jesus' "I am" statement and this prophecy from Isaiah about the coming Messiah, they use this phrase. It says, "Those walking in darkness." John used this sort of terminology before in John chapter 3. A passage there helps us understand a little bit better what is meant by walking in darkness. It says this, "The light has come into the world, and people love darkness rather than the light because their deeds were evil. For everyone who does evil hates the light and avoids it, so that his deeds may not be exposed." Those walking in darkness are those who live life in evil. And Jesus says in contrast to this, he says that he is the light of the world. Those walking in darkness avoid the light. And we see throughout this passage that Jesus is contrasting himself, who is the light, with the Pharisees. Even though they keep the Jewish law, they are walking in darkness. Let's look at some of these different contrasting statements that Jesus makes. One, he says that he is going away and they will die in their sins. He is going away and they will die in their sins. It says he's going away and they will look for him, but where he is going, they cannot go. In chapter 12, it says that the light is only going to be with them for a little bit longer. And the people, they were confused by Jesus making this statement. They're like, will Jesus kill himself? Like, how's he going to go away? Jesus is specifically talking about his resurrection and ascension into heaven. The light of the world is now in heaven. It says in the book of Revelation, where John is seeing this vision of heaven, it says there that there is no sun or no moon in heaven because the glory of God illuminates everything. It gives us this word picture. It says the lamp is the Lamb. But for these religious leaders, the Pharisees, instead of them going to heaven where the light is, those in darkness will die in their sin. This word sin here in this paragraph is singular. Think about the sin of unbelief, rejecting Jesus as the Messiah. Out of every evil that someone can commit, that is the unforgivable transgression. Failing to believe that he is the one who God has sent. And the result of this is eternal separation from Jesus, who is the light. It's by no chance that Jesus describes hell as outer darkness, a place completely void of light. This is not the case of those who are followers of Jesus. This statement that Jesus makes with the religious leaders there in chapter 8, he says that he is going away. He makes a similar statement to his group of disciples later on in chapter 13. There he tells them that he is going away and they cannot come with him. But he adds on this extra statement. He says, but you will follow me later. Those living by the light will not die in their sins, but they will spend eternity in the light of the Lamb. Next, we see another picture here. It says that Jesus is from above, but they are of this world. He says that he is from above. He's talking about his divinity. We saw this in John chapter 6, where Jesus said he is the bread that has come down from heaven. Jesus is claiming that he is the Son of God. This is in contrast to these religious leaders. He says they are of this world. What does it mean to be of this world? We'll see how John says this later on in chapter 8. He says, if God were your father, you would love me, because I came from God and I am here. For I didn't come on my own, but he sent me. Why don't you understand what I say? It's because you cannot listen to my word. You are of your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he tells a lie, he speaks from his own nature, because he is a liar and the father of lies. This fallen world is listening to the lies of the devil. They belong to their father, the devil. The Bible says that the devil is disguising himself as the angel of light, leading them into rebellion to their Creator. In verse 25, these religious leaders, they say, "Who are you?" And Jesus responds to them. He's like, exactly who I've been telling you from the beginning. It's like Jesus is saying, how clear can I make it to you? But these religious leaders, while claiming to know God, God is right in front of them. And yet they totally miss him because they bought into the lies. We see in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 3, Paul uses a very similar metaphor. He says this, in their case, the God of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. It says that the unbelievers, that they are veiled, that they are blinded. It's like they're standing out in the sun, but they're wearing a blindfold and complaining about how dark it is outside. And Paul, he continues with this metaphor of light and darkness. He says, for God has said, let light shine out of darkness. It is shown in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of God's glory in the face of Jesus Christ. Jesus is the Son of God. He is the perfect light, and it is shine through the darkness into our hearts. And it says that he gives us the light of knowledge. Right? Just last week, we talked about the Spirit of truth, bringing truth to the lies. His followers here in this passage, they're listening to the devil. They hear him. They follow his ways. But the followers of Jesus are different. They don't listen to the lies. They hear the truth and they respond to it. Followers of Jesus are not literally from heaven like Jesus is. Their Father is also God. This passage continues. We see another contrasting statement. He says this, that he will be lifted up, but they will be judged. He will be lifted up, but they will be judged. We saw this term lifted up in John chapter 3, where Jesus is comparing himself to this Old Testament story in the wilderness of the bronze snake that Moses nailed to a pole. This plague that was moving throughout the land. And in those days, that if the people who were bit by this poisonous snake looked at the bronze snake nailed to a pole, they would be saved from death. And Jesus is comparing himself to this. He says that he will be lifted up. He's specifically talking about him being lifted up on the cross, where he was nailed to a wooden pole, publicly for everyone who sees. And those who live in darkness, if they will look on him, they will be saved. Those who trust in Jesus as their atoning sacrifice, as we saw throughout the book of 1 John. Those who believe that Jesus died in their place, they will not perish, but have eternal life. But these religious leaders, the ones who want to go around judging everyone else, they will be the ones who are judged. They are judged, listen, because even if you are a religious leader, you still cannot meet God's expectation for perfection. The Bible says that we all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Listen, if salvation is dependent upon our ability to be good, we will all fail. But praise God that no matter if we have been the worst of offenders in the world, all who look to the Son lifted up on the cross, who put their hope in his perfection, not our attempts at perfection, we will be saved. Our judgment will be erased. Through these conversations that Jesus is having with the Pharisees, Jesus is making a distinction between himself, who is the light of the world, and these religious leaders who are walking in darkness. And so for us, in this room, what is our application? It's for us to walk in the light. To walk in the light. We see the negative effects of us walking in darkness. These statements about the Pharisees, the religious leaders. Let us do different from that and let us walk in the light. Jesus gave the appeal at the beginning of the discussion. He said this, "Anyone who follows me will never walk in darkness." It was obvious that Jesus had this conversation with the Pharisees in public because there was a response from the crowds who heard him. They say this, "As he was saying these things, many believed in him." Many who heard Jesus having this contrasting statements with the Pharisees, and they believed in him. And Jesus gives them the next step. He says, "This is what you do now that you believe." Then Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, "If you continue in my word, you really are my disciples." And this word continue, this is John's favorite word that we just recently talked about. It's that same Greek word to remain. Those who remain in my word, they really are Jesus's disciples. We see here in this passage that when Jesus talks about his word, he's literally talking about his words in that moment. But it's also his words that have been passed down to us through the scriptures. It says in Psalm 119, it says that your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. When we read this book, the light of the world is revealed to us. And we see everything around us more clearly. Walking in the light gives us direction. If you turn on the lights on your car at night, you can see better where you should go on the road. If you turn on the light in the stairs at night, you don't get scared when someone else is walking towards you. You don't trip down the stairs. And Jesus, he makes this statement. He says, while you have the light, he says, walk while you have the light so darkness doesn't overtake you. The one who walks in darkness doesn't know where he is going. And listen, some of you, you feel lost in life. There's situations that you're facing that have you down or confused. And God has given us his word so that we can help find direction through life. And the Bible doesn't tell us what job we should take, what house we should buy, what medical procedure to try, but it gives us wisdom, principles that apply to all areas of life. Some of you may be wandering through life in the dark. You're constantly stubbing your toe or busting your knee because you have no direction. I'm telling you, here is the flashlight. Turn it on so that you can see where you're going. Walking in the light also has no shame. Think about how people do wicked things in the darkness. They sneak up on people and harm them. People pursue sinful pleasures when they think no one can see them. Paul, he tells Christians to not live like that. He says this in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. He says, "For you were once in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the light consists of all goodness, righteousness, and truth." He says this, that when we live by the light of God's word, we are living by our Creator's design, and there is no shame in that. There's no shame in my pursuits of my wife. There's no shame in how I treat others. There's no shame in your business dealings. We are living in the light. Also, when we walk in the light, it brings light to those who are in darkness. Jesus, he made this really famous statement in the Sermon on the Mount. He says this, "You are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but rather on a lampstand, and it gives light for all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." This afternoon, we will leave this place. We will go back to our homes. We will go back to our jobs tomorrow. And there are many people around us who are living in darkness. And that is a scary place to be. But we have seen the light. It has pierced our hearts, and now it shines through us. Specifically, as Jesus said there, through our good works. And while Jesus is the light of the world, he is no longer with us. But it says that his followers, we are also the light of the world. Let us go from this place, taking the light into the darkness. Today, for those living in darkness, my call for you is to receive the light of the world. Step out of the darkness into the light. And if you are a follower of Jesus, let us go from this place, walking in the light. Thanks for listening to this teaching. I hope that it's been helpful to you. If you'd like to take a next step, we invite you to go to atmonriver.com and click on the button that says Connect with Us. May God bless you with the grace and peace of Jesus Christ, our Lord.